Welcome to SleepLore. This is where curiosity finds comfort, science takes a gentle path, and sometimes the deepest mysteries of life turn into the coziest stories to lull you to sleep. Tonight, we won't be talking about distant stars or tiny subatomic particles. Instead, we'll embark on a truly captivating journey, a gentle exploration into the unseen realm to ponder a concept that has quietly fascinated humanity for thousands of years. It's a question that no microscope or telescope can ever touch, yet it weaves its way into every corner of our minds and emotions. The question is there really a soul? This question has drifted through ancient cultures, echoed in grand religions, puzzled philosophers, and even peeked into the realm of science. Yet it always seems to elude a simple answer. It whispers in old prayers, resonates in lullabies and ghostly tales we heard as children. And sometimes it appears in our quietest moments, when we gaze up at a starry night, wondering about our place in the universe, or when we hold the hand of a loved one fading away, sensing an invisible yet profound shift. Is there an invisible self inside each of us, a core essence that somehow lingers after the body is gone? Or is the soul simply a clever trick of the brain, a comforting story we tell ourselves to ease the fear of simply ending? Before we dive deeper into these thoughts, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And how do you feel about this question? Do you believe in the existence of a soul, or are you more of a skeptic seeking tangible proof? It's fitting, isn't it? A conversation about the invisible. And here we are together, each in our own quiet corner of the universe, connected by an ancient, deeply human question that holds such personal meaning for all of us. If you find this journey soothing, perhaps intriguing enough to gently stir your curiosity before sleep, or simply a nice way to unwind after a long day, I'd be ever so grateful if you gave this video a like. And if you wish to continue exploring the wonders of the universe and yourself in this calm, unhurried way, please consider subscribing and sharing this peaceful space with someone else who might also need a quiet pause. Now, I truly hope this topic isn't so fascinating that it keeps you wide awake. But if it does, well, at least you'll have learned something about one of life's greatest mysteries before you finally drift off. So, settle in, take a deep breath, slow your thoughts, and let's begin this exploration. Because somewhere between the questions and the answers, the dreams and the daylight, lies the story of what we call the soul. Let's begin our journey long, long ago, at the very dawn of human awareness. When our ancient ancestors first gazed up at the vast star-filled night sky, looked down at the nurturing earth beneath their feet, and then turned their gaze inward to that miraculous yet fragile thing we call life, they began to wonder about existence, about death, and about what might lie between those two great boundaries. The concept of a soul, or something very much like it, was one of the earliest ideas humans tried to grasp, seeking to explain phenomena that stretched beyond their physical understanding. Let's gently step back in time to the mystical Nile Valley, where the magnificent civilization of ancient Egypt flourished thousands of years ago. For them, the soul wasn't a simple idea. It was a complex collection of many parts, each carrying its own meaning and role in life and after death. First, there was the Ka. The Ka was seen as the life force or vital essence of an individual, an essential flow of living energy that remained within the body during life and maintained a connection to it even after death. The Egyptians believed that the Ka needed food and drink to survive in the afterlife, which is why they carefully placed meals, beverages, and personal items in their tombs. The Ka was thought of as an energetic double of the body, existing alongside it, and it required a lasting home, which was often the mummified body itself, or a special Ka statue placed within the tomb. Next, we encounter the Ba. The Ba was a more complex idea, often described as the personality soul or spirit. It was imagined as a human-headed bird, capable of flying out of the tomb during the day to explore the world, breathe the air, and then returning to the mummified body at night. The Ba represented what made a person unique: their character, their identity, and their individual experiences. It symbolized the soul's ability to move freely and interact with the outside world, a freedom that the Ka did not possess. And then there was the Ak, considered the immortal and transformed part of the soul. The Ak was the perfect merging of the Ka and Ba, achieved after successfully navigating the funeral rituals and the judgment of the gods. The Ak was understood as the transfigured soul, becoming a transcendent being, united with the gods and destined to live eternally in the realm of the dead. This was the ultimate goal for every ancient Egyptian, to attain the state of Ak and live a blessed, everlasting life alongside the deities. Beyond these main components, there were other important, though perhaps less known aspects of the soul. The Ren was a person's true name, believed to hold their essence and power. As long as the name was remembered, the person was thought to live on. The Abib, or heart, was considered the center of emotions, intellect, and will, not just a physical organ, but the repository of memories and moral character. And finally, the Shot, the shadow, was seen as an inseparable part of a person, carrying their essence and form. For the Egyptians, preparing for the afterlife was not just a side activity, but often the very core of their earthly lives. Their magnificent pyramids, elaborately decorated tombs, and meticulous mummification rituals stand as powerful testaments to their deep belief in the soul's continued existence and its journey beyond death. It was not merely a fear of dying, but a profound conviction in the continuation of life in another form. Leaving Egypt, we journey to ancient Greece, where brilliant minds began to understand the world through reason and logic. Greek philosophers also grappled with the idea of the soul, but in a different, more abstract way. Socrates and his student Plato, two giants of Athenian thought, believed that the soul, psyche, was immortal and could exist separately from the body. For Plato, the soul was our true essence, a divine and eternal entity capable of reason and intellect, temporarily trapped within the physical body like a sailor within a ship. He argued that the soul was unchanging and had existed before entering the body. The goal of life, according to Plato, was for the soul to free itself from the material limitations of the body through the pursuit of knowledge and virtue. After death, the soul would return to the world of forms, a perfect and eternal realm where it could behold absolute truth. Plato even divided the soul into three parts: the rational part, logos, the spirited or willful part, thumos, and the appetitive part, epithumia, each playing a distinct role in shaping human behavior and character. Aristotle, Plato's most famous student, took a more practical and biological approach. He did not view the soul as a separate, distinct entity, but rather as the form, eidos, or the functional soul of the body. In other words, the soul was what made the body alive and capable of performing its functions. Much like the shape of a knife is what makes it a knife. Without that shape, it is no longer a knife. According to Aristotle, there were three kinds of souls. The vegetative soul, responsible for growth, reproduction, and nutrition, found in plants. The sensitive soul, which included the functions of the vegetative soul plus sensation and movement, found in animals. And the rational soul, encompassing all the above functions plus the ability to think and reason, unique to humans. When the body died, the vegetative and sensitive souls also ceased to exist. However, Aristotle left open the possibility that a certain rational part of the human soul might be immortal and non-physical, though he didn't elaborate much on this. His views laid the groundwork for later biological and psychological studies, focusing on the mind's functions rather than its purely metaphysical nature. Other philosophical schools also contributed to the idea of the soul. The Orphics and Pythagoreans believed in the transmigration of souls, that the soul would be reborn into various bodies until it was purified. Epicurus, on the other hand, held a more materialistic view, suggesting that the soul was made of atoms, and when the body died, the soul's atoms dispersed, implying no afterlife. Traveling across continents, we arrive at the mystical East, where unique cultures and philosophies shaped incredibly profound and diverse concepts of the soul. In Hinduism, the concept of the soul is central to all its teachings. The Atman is considered the eternal, unchanging self, the individual soul, a divine spark residing within every living being. It is not a part of the physical body or the mind, but rather our true, deepest essence. The Atman is believed to be a fragment of Brahman, the universal soul, the ultimate reality, the infinite and eternal. The ultimate goal of life, according to Hinduism, is to achieve moksha, which is liberation from samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, by realizing the oneness of Atman and Brahman. Every action we take creates karma, and karma determines the soul's journey through samsara in future lives. Buddhism, emerging from Hinduism, offers a distinctive and often misunderstood perspective with its concept of anatta, or no self. Anatta means that there is no permanent, unchanging soul or self. This doesn't imply that individuals don't exist, but rather that our existence is a constantly changing collection of physical and mental elements, known as the five aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness. It's like the flame of a candle. There isn't a fixed flame entity, just a continuous process of burning. When a person dies, the stream of consciousness and karma continues, giving rise to a new existence, a rebirth, without a fixed soul moving from one body to another. This challenges the usual understanding of a soul, inviting us to think more deeply about our true nature and the connection between all beings. In ancient China, concepts of the soul were also rich and varied. Taoism believed in achieving immortality through cultivation of the body and spirit, aligning oneself with the Tao, the way of the universe. They thought that the soul could ascend to become part of the celestial beings. Practices like breathing exercises, meditation, and special diets were all aimed at prolonging life and nourishing the inner soul. Confucianism, on the other hand, focused less on the individual soul and more on ethics, social relationships, and the continuity of the family line through ancestor worship. While it didn't have a clear concept of an immortal individual soul like Western traditions, the reverence for ancestors reflected a belief in some form of continued existence or influence of the deceased on their descendants. The souls of ancestors, Hun and Po, heavenly and earthly souls, were still believed to be able to bestow blessings or cause trouble if not properly honored. And let's not forget the indigenous cultures across the world, from Aboriginal Australians to African tribes and Native Americans. For them, the natural world was not just a place to live, but a vibrant, living entity filled with spirits. They believed in animism, the idea that everything, not just humans and animals, but also plants, rocks, mountains, rivers, and even natural phenomena like wind or thunder, possesses a soul. The human soul was often seen as an inseparable part of this larger cosmic web of spirits. Shamans, healers, and individuals with special abilities often served as bridges between the physical and spirit worlds, communicating with ancestral spirits to seek guidance, heal illnesses, or resolve community issues. Rituals, sacred dances, and vision quests were ways for them to connect deeply with the spirit world, gaining wisdom and power from it. Whether it was the Egyptian Ka, the Buddhist Anatta, or the belief in the souls of mountains and rivers, it is clear that from the very dawn of history, humans sensed something beyond their physical bodies, something that gave meaning to existence, to the fear of death, and to the hope of a life beyond. This wasn't merely the naivety of ancient peoples. It was a fundamental human search for meaning, for something eternal in a finite world. The sheer variety of soul concepts across ancient cultures shows a universal human need, the need to find meaning, purpose, and comfort in the face of death. The soul became a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between temporary existence and something eternal. It wasn't just a spiritual belief, but a cognitive framework, helping humans understand their place in the universe and their relationships with each other. And from these ancient seeds of thought, the concepts of the soul would continue to grow and shape the worldviews of billions of people in the great religions that followed. From the ancient seeds of thought we've just explored, the concept of the soul grew, flourished, and became a strong foundation for many of the world's great religions. These beliefs were not just abstract ideas. They profoundly shaped morality, laws, and how billions of people viewed life, death, and their very purpose for existing. The soul, within the framework of religion, often carries a sacred importance and an eternal hope. Let's begin with one of the cornerstones of soul belief in the Western world: Christianity. In Christian teachings, the soul is seen as immortal, the most sacred part of each human being, a breath or spirit given by God, created in God's own image and likeness. The soul is not just a part of a person, but the dwelling place of their will, emotions, intellect, and conscience. It is our deepest essence, what connects us to the Creator. Christian doctrines emphasize that the soul, while deeply connected to human nature, also has the ability to exist independently of the body after death. When death occurs, the soul is believed to leave the physical body and face God's judgment. Depending on a person's faith, actions, and repentance during their earthly life, the soul will either go to heaven, a place of eternal blessedness with God, or to hell, a place of eternal punishment. In some Christian denominations, like Catholicism, a soul might also pass through purgatory for purification before entering heaven. This belief system establishes a powerful moral framework. The idea of an immortal soul and a final judgment day motivates people to live a righteous and compassionate life and to follow divine teachings. This is because, from this perspective, earthly life is merely a temporary journey, a test to prepare the soul for its eternal destiny. Debates among theologians about the relationship between the soul and the body, dualism versus monism, have occurred throughout Christian history, but the core belief in the soul's immortality has remained steadfast. The concept of the resurrection of the body is also crucial, suggesting that at the end of time, souls will be reunited with resurrected and transformed physical bodies. Moving on to Islam, we find the concept of the soul, referred to as ruh or nafs, to be incredibly vital as well. Ruh is often understood as God's breath, a divine spirit breathed into Adam and his descendants. It is the source of life and consciousness, a mystery that God has bestowed upon humanity. Nafs is often used to refer to the ego, the self, or the individual soul, which can be influenced by worldly desires and temptations. In Islam, the soul is also believed to be immortal and to continue existing after the body's death. Like Christianity, there is a final day of judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah, where every soul will appear before Allah to be held accountable for their deeds. Those who have lived according to Islamic teachings and believed in Allah will enter paradise, Jannah, a place of eternal bliss. Conversely, sinful souls will be punished in hell, Jahannam. The belief in the Ruh and the Day of Judgment motivates Muslims to live a life in accordance with Sharia law, fulfilling the 5 pillars of Islam, such as prayer, fasting, and charity, and striving to do good. They believe that each soul is personally responsible for its actions, and no one can bear the sins of another. The concept of barzakh is an intermediary stage that the soul experiences between death and the Day of Judgment, a place where the soul waits and may begin to sense the punishment or reward for its deeds. In Judaism, the views on the soul, often referred to as nefesh, ruach, neshama, are quite diverse and less systematically defined compared to Christianity or Islam. Yet it remains a fundamental part of their theology. Nefesh is often linked to physical life, breath, and basic instincts. Ruach relates to spirit, emotions, and intellect. Neshama is considered the highest part of the soul, connecting directly with God, a divine spark within each person. Some traditions even add 2 more levels: chaya, life force, vitality, and yechida, unique, the indivisible essence of the soul, united with God. While there are varying opinions among different Jewish movements, Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, most believe in the immortality of the soul and the resurrection of the dead at the time of the Mashiach, Messiah. They believe that the soul continues to exist after death and will eventually return to a resurrected body. Observing the mitzvot, commandments, studying the Torah, and living a moral life are seen as paths for the soul to be purified and draw closer to God. The preservation and transmission of spiritual heritage from one generation to the next is also seen as a way for the souls of ancestors to continue living within the community. Turning back to Buddhism, as we touched upon in the previous chapter, the concept of anatta, no self, is perhaps the most significant difference from most other religions. Buddhism does not acknowledge the existence of a permanent, unchanging, and separate soul. However, this does not mean Buddhism denies the continuation of consciousness or karma after death. Instead, Buddhism uses the concept of rebirth rather than the transmigration of a soul. Rebirth here is likened to lighting a new candle from an old one. The new flame is not identical to the old flame, but it is a direct continuation from it. Mental factors, karma, consciousness, perception, from one life create the conditions for the emergence of a new life. The cycle of samsara continues until a being achieves nirvana, a state where all suffering and attachment to self cease, leading to complete liberation. Following the Noble Eightfold Path, right understanding, Right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration is the way to purify the mind and reach nirvana. Beyond these major religions, many other ancient and modern beliefs also hold unique views on the soul. For example, in animistic religions found in many parts of the world, the soul is not limited to humans, but also exists in animals, plants, and other natural objects. The human soul is seen as part of a larger cosmic network of spirits. Rituals, offerings, and shamanic practices are often performed to communicate and harmonize with these spirits. The sheer variety in how the soul is understood across different religions reveals a common human need: the search for meaning, purpose, and comfort in the face of life's limitations and the fear of death. The soul often becomes a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between temporary existence and something eternal. And this brings us to another important aspect: how the belief in the soul has shaped human ethics and behavior. For many faiths, the idea of an immortal soul, a judgment after death, or a cycle of karmic rebirth has become a powerful motivator for people to live good and virtuous lives. If there is a soul, and that soul is accountable for our actions, then acting with kindness, avoiding evil, and developing compassion becomes supremely important. It encourages selflessness, charity, and the capacity for forgiveness. Conversely, the fear of eternal punishment or a more difficult existence in a future life has served as a strong deterrent, helping to maintain social order and encouraging adherence to moral standards. Even rituals, from baptisms to funerals, carry deep meaning related to the soul. They are moments where communities come together to affirm beliefs, support the soul on its journey, and find peace amidst grief. These rituals are not just social activities, they are profound spiritual experiences that help people connect with each other and with something greater than themselves. So, over millennia, religions have consistently nurtured and shaped the belief in the soul, making it an indispensable part of the cultural and spiritual identity of billions. Despite their differences in details, they all share a common echo. There is something deep, eternal, and more meaningful than what we can perceive with our ordinary senses. These are not merely ancient stories, they are frameworks. If the echoes from the past and the teachings from great religions have woven a rich tapestry of the soul, now let us turn to a different perspective, one shaped by precise measurements, controlled experiments, and complex mathematical formulas. Can science, with its tools and methods, find evidence for the soul, a non-physical entity, within our physical world? For many centuries, physical science has focused on what can be observed, measured, and consistently repeated. From this viewpoint, the soul, often described as something non-material and beyond our senses, seems to lie outside the current reach of scientific study. Neuroscientists, those who deeply study the brain, often see it as the very center of consciousness, thought, emotion, and everything we call self. The human brain, with its incredible network of billions of nerve cells and trillions of connections, is an astonishingly complex structure. Everything we think, feel, and experience can be linked to the electrical and chemical activity within these brain networks. When a person suffers brain damage from an accident, a stroke, or an illness like Alzheimer's, we often see clear and sometimes heartbreaking changes in their consciousness, memory, personality, and ability to understand the world. Someone who was once very loving might become indifferent. A talkative person might lose their ability to speak, or memories of an entire life might simply vanish. This shows a deep connection between the physical state of the brain and what we consider our mind or soul. When the brain stops working, its electrical activity ceases, and consciousness, it seems, also disappears completely. This has led many to conclude that consciousness is a product or something that naturally comes out of the physical brain, rather than a separate being existing apart from it. However, even within the world of brain science, there remains what is often called the hard problem of consciousness. This problem isn't about how the brain processes information or controls our movements. Those are considered easy problems. The hard problem is, how and why does a lump of physical matter like the brain create rich, personal experiences, such as feeling the color red, the ache of losing someone, or the joy of beautiful music? Why do we feel things, instead of just processing information like a very smart computer? Is consciousness simply a complex set of electrical and chemical signals, or is there something more to it, an element that our current physics cannot yet grasp? This question continues to be one of the biggest challenges for scientists and thinkers today. Another area of study that has captured public imagination for decades is near-death experiences, or NDEs. These are reports from people who have been clinically dead, meaning their heart stopped and their brain activity ceased, and were then brought back to life. Millions of people around the world have told stories of these incredibly vivid experiences, which often share striking common features. Common parts of NDEs include feeling like they've left their body, floating above it, and seeing doctors working on them, traveling through a dark tunnel, often with a bright light at the end, meeting deceased loved ones or beings of pure light, sometimes seen as gods or angels according to their beliefs. A quick review of their entire life, feeling the impact of their actions on others, and a profound sense of peace and unconditional love, without any pain or fear. Often, there's a strong feeling of not wanting to return to their body, but also a sense that they have an unfinished task or purpose. These experiences are usually so deep that they completely change the person's view of life, making them no longer fear death and focusing them more on kindness and love. However, scientists explain NDEs in various ways, often based on biological and brain-related principles. They suggest these experiences could be due to the brain lacking oxygen, which can create strange visions and feelings. Or perhaps it's because certain brain chemicals are released when facing death or extreme stress, leading to similar sensations and images. Some studies have even pointed to activity in specific parts of the brain, like the temporal lobe, suggesting that stimulating or disrupting this area might cause out-of-body feelings or spiritual experiences. And some researchers argue that the content of NDEs might be influenced by a person's cultural expectations or religious beliefs. While these scientific explanations offer ways to understand NDEs, they don't fully explain the astonishing similarity of reports across different cultures, or the feeling of being more real than real life that many people describe. Pioneering work by scientists like Sam Parnia has tried to test consciousness during clinical death, using physical markers to see if patients could be aware of their surroundings. Though early results are promising, these studies are still new and haven't provided solid proof that consciousness exists separately. NDEs remain a highly debated area of study with no clear conclusions, continuing to be a bridge between science and spirituality. Then we step into the strange world of quantum mechanics, the study of the tiniest particles that make up our universe. While Newton's classic physics describes a universe that runs like a clockwork machine, quantum mechanics paints a fuzzy, uncertain picture where tiny particles can exist in many places at once or become linked together even when far apart. Some scientists and thinkers have wondered if consciousness, and therefore the soul, might have a quantum nature. This would mean that consciousness might not be bound by the usual rules of space and time. For example, the theory called orchestrated objective reduction, ORC-OR, proposed by physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, suggests that consciousness comes from tiny quantum processes happening inside very small structures within brain cells. According to this idea, these tiny structures might act like a kind of quantum computer. When the brain dies or experiences a near-death moment, this quantum information might not be lost, but simply released into the universe, continuing to exist in some form. It's important to remember, though, that the ORC-OR theory is highly debated and is not widely accepted by most mainstream scientists. Many physicists and brain researchers see it as an interesting idea, but one that doesn't yet have strong evidence. Still, the idea of connecting the mysteries of consciousness with the mysteries of quantum mechanics continues to inspire researchers to explore new possibilities. Other ideas have also been suggested, such as consciousness being a field of information outside the brain, or something that emerges from complex quantum interactions. We also cannot forget some early 20th century experiments that attempted to weigh the soul. For instance, Dr. Duncan McDougall in 1907 conducted highly controversial experiments where he placed dying patients on a special scale to measure their weight right before and after death. McDougall claimed to have observed a small drop in weight, around 21 grams, the moment a patient took their last breath. He guessed this might be the weight of the soul leaving the body. However, these experiments were largely rejected by the scientific community. They had serious problems with how they were done, too few patients, and inconsistent results. Many scientists pointed out that any weight change could easily be explained by normal physical processes, like the evaporation of body fluids, gas leaving the lungs, or muscle contractions. Modern science confirms that energy and matter follow the law of conservation. They don't just disappear or appear out of nowhere. To this day, there is no scientific proof that the soul is a form of energy or matter that can be measured. In summary, when we look at the soul through the lens of science, we don't find physical evidence that can be consistently reproduced. Brain science has shown us a deep connection between the brain and consciousness, suggesting that consciousness comes from brain activity. Near-death experiences, while powerful, can often be explained by biological processes. And quantum theories about consciousness remain bold ideas. However, this doesn't mean science completely denies the soul's existence. It simply means that with our current tools and methods, the soul remains beyond what science can measure and verify. Science is a never-ending journey of expanding knowledge, and what we don't understand today might be discovered tomorrow. The question of consciousness and the nature of self remains one of the biggest puzzles, a challenge for science to keep pushing its boundaries. And perhaps it is precisely these unanswered questions that are most exciting, pushing us to continue thinking and exploring. If religions and science have offered us grand views of the soul, now let's turn our attention inward to ourselves. Is there a concept closer to our own experience, a deep self, an identity, that we feel every single day? In modern psychology and philosophy, thinkers have continuously explored the nature of consciousness, of self-awareness, and its complex relationship with our physical bodies. Within the field of psychology, we don't usually talk about the soul in a way that suggests it's something entirely separate from the body. Instead, we explore the self, our awareness of being an individual, and how our personality is shaped. Think about those moments when you ask yourself who you really are, what makes you unique, and what guides your actions and thoughts. These are precisely the questions psychology tries to gently unravel. A well-known psychologist like Carl Jung spoke of a collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of experiences and images common to all humanity, lying deep beneath our individual awareness. He called these archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and symbols that appear in myths, dreams, and various cultures. While not the soul in a traditional sense, this idea suggests that there's something deeper connecting all of us, a shared stream of human spirit that goes beyond our individual selves, a psychological inheritance from our distant ancestors. Perhaps these shared psychological structures could form the very foundation of the soul-like feeling we share. Psychologists have also carefully studied how our self is built and changes over time. From our earliest childhood, we begin to form a sense of who we are through our interactions with family, friends, and society. This self isn't a static, unmoving thing. It's a story that is constantly being rewritten, adjusted by new experiences, new relationships, and our own personal growth. If someone goes through a major life change, a traumatic event, or simply grows older, they might feel as though a part of them has died, or that they are not the same person anymore. This gently tells us that the self is not unchangeable. It can shift and adapt. Meanwhile, modern philosophy continues to ask profound questions about the nature of consciousness and its link to physical matter. And these questions often bring us right to the edge of whether a soul might exist. Let's revisit dualism, an idea championed by the philosopher René Descartes. He suggested that the mind, or soul, and the body are two entirely separate things. The mind, he thought, is non-physical, the place of thought and consciousness, while the body is purely physical, simply following the laws of nature. He even believed these two separate parts interacted in a tiny gland in the brain called the pineal gland. This view had a powerful influence for many centuries, strengthening the idea that there is an invisible soul distinct from our physical body. In contrast to dualism, there's monism, which proposes that there's only one kind of reality. Physical monism, for example, suggests that consciousness is simply a product or a side effect of the physical brain, nothing more than its electrical and chemical activities. Every thought and emotion we have, they argue, can be explained by the brain's chemistry and physics. On the other hand, idealist monism suggests that consciousness is the fundamental reality, and physical matter is just an aspect or expression of consciousness. Both of these views try to simplify the relationship between mind and matter, but they lead to very different conclusions about the soul. One of the most thought-provoking puzzles in modern philosophy is the problem of personal identity, or the continuity of the self. If we know that the cells in our body are constantly being replaced, our memories are always shifting, and our life experiences change us, then what makes the me of today still the me of yesterday and the me of tomorrow? Is there some unchanging core, a soul, that keeps our self continuous? Or, as some philosophers and Buddhist teachings suggest, is there no fixed self at all, but rather a continuous stream of events, experiences, and connections that simply flow together? This idea gently prompts us to realize that the self might not be the solid entity we imagine, but rather a process, a story we are constantly telling about ourselves. To gently challenge our ideas, philosophers often offer fascinating thought experiments. One such experiment is the brain in a vat. Imagine a scientist could keep your brain alive in a jar, connecting its nerve endings to a supercomputer that could send and receive all the same nerve signals as if the brain were still in your body. Would you, with all your consciousness, memories, and feelings, still be you, simply existing in a jar? This quietly pushes us to think about the boundary between the physical and the non-physical, and whether what we consider reality might simply be the brain being stimulated by its environment, whether real or artificial. Another very intriguing thought experiment involves teleportation. Imagine that in the future, we have a machine that can perfectly scan your entire body and brain down to the atomic level, then destroy your original body and recreate a perfect copy of you, atom by atom, in a different location. Would the person who appears at the new location truly be you, or just a copy? If it's a copy, what happened to the original you or soul? Was it destroyed, or did it somehow transfer to the copy? These questions gently challenge anyone who believes in a single, indivisible soul, and make us redefine what you truly means. And we cannot overlook the rapid progress of artificial intelligence, AI. As AI becomes more and more complex, capable of learning, creating, and even understanding human language, a new question quietly emerges. Could a sufficiently advanced AI ever develop consciousness and a soul? If a machine could perfectly imitate every function of the human brain, perhaps even surpass it, should we then grant it consciousness or a soul? This gently compels us to rethink our definitions of consciousness and the soul, asking if they are exclusively biological. In summary, within the realms of modern psychology and philosophy, the idea of the soul is often replaced by deeper conversations about consciousness, identity, and the continuous nature of the self. While there are no simple answers, these gentle reflections have opened new doors to our understanding of the incredibly complex human experience. Perhaps the soul isn't a fixed, unchanging entity, but rather a feeling, a process, a story we are constantly telling about ourselves as time gently flows. It's an inseparable part of how we perceive, think, and interact with this world, regardless of whether its origin is physical or something beyond our physical grasp. If science hasn't yet managed to prove the soul's existence in a physical way that we can touch or measure, and philosophy continues its deep debates about its true nature, there's one thing we simply cannot deny. The belief in a soul remains a deeply felt part of the human experience. It's an invisible yet strong thread that weaves meaning into the lives of billions of people across our world. So why, regardless of specific scientific evidence, does this idea remain so powerfully present in our minds? And why does it hold such profound importance for so many of us? Perhaps the soul isn't a physical object to be weighed or a mathematical formula to be solved. Instead, it's a concept that brings deep meaning to life, a gentle anchor for our spirits as we navigate the many storms of existence. Think for a moment about when you stand beside a loved one who is fading away, or when you hear the news of a loss that feels impossible to bear. Even though we know their physical body is gone, in the deepest corners of our hearts, we still feel that something of them remains, still present in our memories, in the lessons they shared, in the smiles or glances we once cherished, and in the feelings we hold for them. The belief in a soul offers immense comfort and hope in the face of death, easing the fear of simply ceasing to be. It allows us to believe that love, profound connections, and even the stories of a life don't truly end with the last breath, but perhaps shift to another form, another dimension, somehow still existing in the vast expanse of the universe. Furthermore, the idea of the soul often carries a strong sense of right and wrong, a gentle compass for our behavior. If we believe that an immortal part of us will face the consequences of our actions in this life, or that our journey will continue through different lives based on what we do, then that creates a powerful drive to live a good and kind life. It encourages us to do good, to avoid harm, and to grow in compassion for others. Because the soul is believed to carry the marks of our actions, personal responsibility becomes incredibly important, not just because of social rules or laws, but from a deep sense of conscience, an inner growth, a continuous effort to nourish the best parts of who we are. It helps us overcome fleeting temptations, choosing instead the path of honesty and kindness. The soul also confirms the unique and irreplaceable value of each person. In a vast world that can sometimes feel meaningless or harsh, where we might feel like a tiny speck, the idea of a special, unrepeatable soul gives each of us a sense of significance and a purpose for being. It suggests that we are not just a collection of cells, a random chemical reaction, or simply a creature meant to survive. Instead, we are something non-physical, something special, carrying a divine spark or a unique essence. This is the deep root of our dignity, our self-worth, and the meaning of life that each of us seeks. We feel that we have value, a unique story to tell, and a special place in the intricate tapestry of life. For many, the soul also serves as a bridge to something greater than themselves, a sense of something transcendent. This might be an all-powerful divine being, a vast universe with a shared consciousness, or a network of energy that connects all living things. This belief brings a sense of belonging, a connection to a larger picture, helping people overcome loneliness and their own smallness in the immense universe. It is a gentle invitation for us to open our hearts to things beyond physical understanding, to feel a higher presence, a cosmic harmony of which we are a part. And what's fascinating is that whether we personally believe in a soul or not, the way we live our lives is still shaped by these deep ideas. We yearn to love and be loved. We search for meaning in our work and in our relationships. We strive to live a valuable life, to leave a legacy, something that might endure after we are gone, whether it's an idea, a creation, or simply beautiful memories in the hearts of others. We seek purpose and feel connected. All of these aspirations point to something beyond mere physical existence, a yearning for something immortal, whether literally or figuratively. Perhaps even the most materialistic individuals often search for a deeper meaning in life, something to dedicate themselves to leave their mark. Could this also be another expression of the need for a soul, for a meaningful existence that transcends the boundaries of the body? Perhaps the soul isn't a mystery to be solved once and for all, not a puzzle to find an exact answer to, but rather a question to gently ponder, a continuous invitation for us to explore the depths of ourselves and our relationship with the universe. It's a concept that is constantly being redefined and explored across every generation and culture, offering comfort, meaning, and direction to our lives as time gently flows. It's a harmonious blend of belief and experience, of things that cannot be proven by physical tools and things that we feel with our entire hearts, with our intuition, and with a sense of something sacred. The universal and enduring presence of the belief in a soul across all cultures and times suggests a fundamental human need, a deep yearning to find something beyond death, beyond the limits of physical life. It shows that even though we are physical beings, we also possess a profound spiritual dimension, an innate ability to ask questions about the meaning and nature of existence, to dream of something eternal. And in this endless search, in the questions we ask, in the thoughts we gently ponder, in the connections we create, perhaps we find a piece of our own soul, an inseparable part of who we are as human beings. We have journeyed together through the ancient sands of time, wandered the grand halls of great religions, and even peeked into the modern laboratories of science. Each step of the way has offered a piece of the puzzle, a unique glimpse into the idea of the soul. But then, as we try to fit all these pieces together, another interesting truth gently reveals itself. Not every question has a simple, clear answer, especially the grand questions about existence itself, about things that seem to lie beyond our usual understanding. In our exploration of the soul, we are gently pressed to face the limits of human knowledge, both scientifically and philosophically. Think for a moment about science, a wonderful way to understand the physical world around us. Science grows by observing, measuring, experimenting, and repeating results. It looks for solid evidence, for patterns that can be predicted. But the soul, as we've discussed, is often described as something non-physical, something outside of space and time as we usually understand them. With its current tools and methods, science simply has no way to catch the soul, to bring it into a laboratory, to weigh it, measure it, or analyze it under a microscope. It's a bit like trying to catch the wind with a fishing net. The wind is real, you can feel it, but you can't catch it in a physical way. This doesn't mean the soul doesn't exist. It simply means it's beyond what current science can reach. And we must also quietly admit that our science, however advanced it has become, is still very young in the grand story of the universe. Are there laws of physics we haven't discovered yet, dimensions we cannot yet sense, or forms of existence our minds can't quite imagine? Perhaps the soul operates on a level of reality that we don't yet have the tools to perceive, much like a person from ancient times couldn't possibly imagine radio waves or electromagnetic fields. Science is always growing and changing, and what we don't understand today might be the starting point for wonderful new discoveries tomorrow. Then there are the limits of philosophy. Philosophy is a wonderful companion for asking deep questions and creating ways of thinking about the world. It helps us break down ideas, think logically, and explore different possibilities. But philosophy, unlike science, doesn't offer practical proof. It cannot definitively tell us the soul exists or the soul does not exist in the same certain way that a chemist can confirm a chemical reaction. Philosophical discussions about the nature of consciousness and the connection between mind and matter have been going on for thousands of years and still haven't reached a final conclusion. Each way of thinking has its own strong arguments, but no one has yet offered the final proof to end the conversation. And sometimes our very own language becomes a quiet barrier. We try to describe abstract, non-physical ideas like the soul using words that were created to describe the physical world. It exists. It leaves. It connects. Are these words truly enough to capture the real nature of something that might extend beyond space and time? We are trying to use a limited set of tools to solve an endless puzzle. Perhaps what we call the soul is an experience, a feeling, a way of understanding that simply cannot be neatly packed into any human words. It's like trying to describe the color red to someone who has never seen colors. You can talk about light waves, but you can't truly give them the feeling of redness. So, should we feel disappointed when we face these unanswered questions? Perhaps not. Instead, we can learn to embrace uncertainty and mystery. Sometimes, the question itself is what truly matters, more than a final answer. The mystery of the soul, of consciousness, of the very purpose of existence, has been what has gently sparked human curiosity throughout all ages. It pushes us to explore, to think more deeply, and to find meaning in our lives. It makes life richer, more vibrant, instead of just a predictable set of events. The lack of a perfect answer also leaves a gentle space for personal belief and individual choice. Each of us can decide what makes the most sense to us, based on our own experiences, our culture, and our deepest feelings. Perhaps the soul exists not as a physical thing that science can grab, but as a living experience, a quiet hope, a feeling of connection that lasts beyond time, an inseparable part of who we are as human beings. In the vastness of the universe and the great complexity of reality, acknowledging that there are things we don't yet understand and perhaps never will fully understand isn't a weakness. Instead, it is a sign of quiet intellectual humility and an open heart ready to embrace wonder. These very unanswered questions have shaped human history, and perhaps they will continue to be an endless source of inspiration for our ongoing journey to understand ourselves and the universe. After journeying through the landscapes of the past and the present, exploring the soul through many different lenses, one final question gently enters our thoughts. Will the very idea of the soul change in the future? As science and technology continue their rapid progress, will we redefine, broaden, or perhaps even replace this ancient notion with entirely new understandings? Let's consider the ongoing, breathtaking developments in brain science. Every day, scientists uncover more wonderful things about how our brains work. They can map out the specific areas of the brain responsible for emotions, memories, and even consciousness itself. As we understand more deeply the biological dance behind every thought and every feeling, will the idea of a soul simply be replaced by more precise explanations from brain science? Will we be able to point to a specific brain region as the source of the self? Or will the incredible complexity of neural connections be enough to explain everything? And then, the rise of truly groundbreaking technologies is pushing the very edges of what we once thought was possible. Imagine the potential for mind uploading, where all the information in a person's brain could be scanned and stored in a powerful computer. If such a thing ever became real, would that digital copy truly be you? Would it be your soul preserved in a new form? Or merely an empty copy without any deep soulfulness? And going even further, the idea of digital immortality, where consciousness might live on forever in a virtual world. These thoughts quietly force us to rethink the lines between biology and technology, between the physical and the non-physical, and whether the soul can exist without a biological body in the traditional sense. Beyond our planet, our exploration of the cosmos might also change how we see the soul. If one day we were to discover intelligent life elsewhere in the universe, would those beings have a concept of a soul? Would the soul turn out to be something unique to humans, or would it be a universal experience across conscious life forms throughout the cosmos? Meeting another civilization with a completely different way of understanding life and death could either expand or gently challenge our own definition of the soul, forcing us to look at the limits of our own thinking. Perhaps the future isn't about science destroying the soul, but rather a gentle blending of science and deeper spiritual insights. Instead of being in conflict, these two areas might actually move forward together to understand consciousness and the soul in a more complete way. Already, some scientists are beginning to explore ideas like cosmic consciousness or a consciousness field. The idea that consciousness isn't just a product of an individual brain, but a universal field of energy or information. And our brains are merely receivers. If this were true, then the soul could be a part of that larger consciousness field, offering a way to explain the soul's existence without needing traditional religious concepts. This is a new, exciting area of thought, where the boundaries between physics, biology, and the spiritual become gently blurred. And finally, no matter how the concept of the soul might change in the future, one thing will likely remain constant. It is humanity's deeply felt need to find meaning and to transcend death. Whether we define the soul as a non-physical essence, a complex pattern of the brain, or a form of cosmic information, the longing for continuity, for a purpose for existing, for connection to something greater, will likely always be there. Perhaps the very evolution of the concept of the soul across different ages, from ancient whispers to modern scientific ideas, is a quiet testament to the ever-growing nature of human awareness. It shows that we are beings who yearn to understand, who long for connection, and who are always seeking a guiding light in the vast, beautiful mystery of infinity. And in this endless quest, we continue to shape and reshape what the soul truly means to us. And so, my dear fellow traveler, we have gently reached the very end of this long yet peaceful journey, a quiet exploration through the flowing currents of time and the deepest parts of consciousness. We have sought to ponder together that ancient, enduring question: is there truly a soul? We have wandered across the desert sands of ancient Egypt, listening for the echoes of Ka and Ba within tombs that have stood for thousands of years. We sat quietly under olive trees with Greek philosophers, weighing the logical thoughts of Plato and the earthy insights of Aristotle. We bowed our heads in solemn respect at the grand mosques and listened to the peaceful temple bells where Buddhism taught about the idea of no self. We even placed the brain under the bright light of scientific scrutiny, searching for the tiny sparks of consciousness within its complex maze, and pondered those mysterious near-death experiences. We also delved into the deep philosophical thoughts about the self, our identity, and the very limits of our language and understanding. Through every step of this journey, we have seen that the soul isn't a simple answer, not a simple thing that can be easily defined or definitively proven. Instead, it is many things all at once. It's a rhythm felt in our hearts, a memory woven from our deepest feelings, a subtle wrinkle in the complex fabric of reality, and a story told by the constant flow of change. It is comfort in the face of loss, inspiration for acts of kindness, and hope for something that reaches beyond the limits of our short lives. And now, as this quiet story comes to a close, here you are, a little further along your own personal timeline than when we began. But was it only a few seconds, or many minutes, or perhaps even an hour that has passed? Or did the gentle flow of words stretch and shrink as it often does when the mind begins to softly settle, ready for sleep? So let me ask you once more, gently, as I did at the very beginning of our journey. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And exactly what time is it right now in your own quiet corner of the world? It's rather interesting, isn't it? After all this talk about invisible things, deep mysteries about time being relative, or perhaps even just an illusion, we still find comfort and a sense of direction in the familiar numbers on a clock, in the quiet hush of the evening, and in the feeling of gently winding down for rest. If you found any peace in this calm exploration, if these questions about the soul, about the meaning of life, brought you a little comfort, or helped your mind relax gently, preparing for sweet dreams, I would be ever so grateful if you took a moment to give this video a like. And if you wish to continue exploring the wonders of the universe and yourself in this calm, unhurried way, please consider subscribing and sharing this peaceful space with someone else who might also need a quiet pause in their busy life. The soul may be a mystery, strange, and perhaps even a complete illusion. But right now, here, in this very moment, it is a part of our story, part of the thoughts we share. It is a deeply felt presence in every heartbeat and every breath you take. Sleep well, my fellow traveler, wherever and whenever you are.